Undaudu to you, my fellow sadhus. We are all sadhus, meaning that enlightenment, nirvana, truth is inherent in all of us. And all you need to do is to start awakening into self-actualization and finally enlightenment. What is enlightenment? Enlightenment is nothing more than living the do. What is do? The do is the foundation of the proto stuff, the entangled stuff that created everything. You and I are 3.8 billion years old. We are eternal. We are everlasting. And we start in the do, which is kind of like the state of timeless entanglement, and we move into a state of Tao, right? And then we go back into a state of Undao Do, the three states, the three evolutions of the man's spirit. And ultimately, the coloring of the do is what creates religion. And with a limited vocabulary, like in the time of Jesus, the time of Muhammad, what would happen? I am a sadhu. I exist in the do. I want you to understand this state, but I lack the vocabulary and you lack the vocabulary. So what can I do? I start coloring the do, and you come up with Islam. You come up with Buddhism. You come up with Hinduism and Taoism, right? All of these different things are merely the coloring. What an atheist is just doing is refusing to color. Oh, I don't want to color. Stop coloring. Can we all just stop coloring? They go crazy at coloring. Coloring is fine. Have fun coloring, provided you don't people by basically saying, you must follow my coloring. You them. You say, you can't be creative. You can't color. No, you must follow my coloring. I am the only coloring. If you don't follow my coloring, you're going to go to hell. You won't have any future. You're going to use all this negativity to stop them. That's the Don't people. Tao. Don't harm. Sorry. Undao Do. Now I can't remember what the Undao Do was. First one is don't unpeople by denying them the right to color. Everyone has a right to color, which basically means you have a right to choose. Tao, okay? Don't impose your coloring. Okay, you've been coloring, and don't impose your coloring on someone and say, this is the only way. This is the only way to color, right? So one, everyone's free to color. Two, do not impose your coloring on others. And three, most importantly, do not harm others with your coloring. If you create the coloring, and let's say it's a Christian coloring, and you're personifying and anthropomorphizing the do and saying it's got all these magical powers, don't say to someone that they can't have an education, or they can't, they have to be enslaved to the man, or they don't have freedom because that's the way the coloring is, right? That is bullshit. The moment you harm someone in your coloring, that is evil. So Undao Do, the three rules of the metaphysics. And if you don't want to color, fine. Atheists are fine. You don't need to color. Not coloring is okay, right? Because the beautiful of the science that defines everything, if you just want to have that sort of framework, that's fine. But the do is merely the dark energy, dark matter. It's the time, space. It's the arrow of time. It is where the electron disappears to. You can't stare. Like in science, you can't stare at the electron. Today, I'm going to talk about Trump Antichrist. Right? This is what I'm going to talk about. And I wasn't aware that August of last year, on August 24, 2019, Trump proclaimed himself to be the second coming. He proclaimed himself to be the king of Israel. So that was pretty crazy. That it got some news. I mean, here it is. I'm reading it here in I don't know. Maybe it got colored. I just wasn't watching the news that day. I was busy in Japan at that time, getting ready for my Undao Do days, October 8, 9, and 10. So those are the Undao Do days, if you want to know, Undao Do. And that's pretty amazing. Now, what I want to talk about is kind of the literal meaning of Antichrist, the antithesis to Christ, one who ultimately is completely opposite. And there is no individual who is closer to that than Donald John Trump. Donald John Trump. I'm like Biden, right? I'm married to Joe Biden. So someone who lies all the time. If you think about the three things of Jesus, right? The three things that Jesus kind of talked about is being generous, right? Being forgiving and giving love. They're the three things. Generous. My Undao Do basic is really help, smile, help, and share. Smile, help, and share. Undao Do. The three things that you can teach a child is Undao Do. Then generous, being generous with your time, being generous with others, forgiving. People make mistakes. Trump never repents. He never says he's wrong. He never forgives, right? Has he ever forgiven anyone? Never. Has he ever shed a tear? I was Googling Trump crying and could not find anything. The closest thing that we could see that Trump was actually emotionally affected was the first time ever that I saw was when he was describing the hospital in his community, the hospital that he knows, right? And how it was stacked up with bodies. That was as close to like Trump, and he didn't even come close to shedding a tear. So when you have someone who ultimately is the antithesis to Jesus, and here's also an interesting thing. The evangelicals call him the wolf prophet, right? They justify supporting him. And here was the deal that Trump struck with the evangelicals. All he wanted them to do is sing his praises in church. That's it. Sing my praises in church. I will fight your battle for abortion. I will put in judges. In a way, it's a signed contract with the devil, right? Is it okay to go to the devil? I'm talking to the religious, right? If you believe in such a thing as the devil, to sign a contract with the devil to stop abortion, to stop, to put judges in, is that okay? And it isn't. In the teachings of Jesus, that is not okay. Signing the death, the imprisonment of individuals for, and forsaking the truth of what you believe is completely antithesis to the teachings of Jesus. So yes, in very literal terms, Trump is the anti-Christ, the antithesis to Christ. As Paul described, he is the man of sin and lies. All he does is sin, 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 right? And he is the prophecy, which means that, the second coming is close. Well, you don't have to look far for the second coming. You don't have to look far, because the second coming is really you. It is you awakening to your due. It is individuals who are awoke, not awakening, but awoke. And when we have a planet of leaders that are awoke, that are generous, that are forgiving, and that love their people, those that become like Jesus, then we will have a world saved. So it's so important for you, if you're a Trump supporter, to awake. Start awakening. Leave your state of unness, and I hope that my talks and other things will help you start to think. Trump doesn't deserve your vote. Someone like him should not be in office. And it's horrific that we put someone as evil and maligned as Trump in our presidency. And why do I say that? Because his defiance of wearing masks, even yesterday in Florida, he defied wearing masks. And for everyone else around him in Miami, it's law. And he's like, I'm above the law. I'm not wearing a mask. And he is basically strutting like a peacock, like the Antichrist. And it's sending a message to his followers: defy the law, don't wear a mask. Here is an unlawful president who has been impeached for crimes. Right? He wasn't convicted, but he was impeached. Remember that. Trump was impeached. Is actively helping inflame the coronavirus. And this is conspiracy bullshit theory, but maybe Atlanta blowing up, is Atlanta Trump land? No. Who's going to die in Atlanta? It's going to be, for the most part, voters who vote against him. How about Miami? Same thing. All these places that, these large in places which has lots of people that vote against him, ultimately is where the pandemic is flaring up, because his supporters, his super spreaders, who also live there, okay? There's still in the community. It's not all blue. There's Trump supporters there. They're in denial of wearing masks. In when the Tulsa rally happened, they were all partying and spreading. The age group is that age that goes is very little. Maybe it has something to do with the rioters too. I'm not going to give them on out, but ultimately we're all living in this together, and the politicization of masks and social distancing is probably his greatest crime, undoubtedly.